If one client email can change your breathing, your calendar problem may be wearing a nervous system costume. That email might say something tiny, like "Can we hop on a quick call?" which is how business people announce they have discovered 17 opinions. Your body hears danger. Your shoulders rise. Your lunch becomes decorative, and suddenly the problem is not the client request. It is that your entire nervous system has joined the project as an unpaid stakeholder. This is part one of the solo creator boundary reset. We are not doing the internet version of boundaries where someone posts "just say no" and then vanishes before the rent bill enters the chat. We are looking at why saying no can feel physically unsafe for freelance creatives. First, we will name the alarm. Then we will connect it to work and money pressure. By the end, you will have a boundary response that protects scope without making your inbox a tiny courtroom. The reason we spend time on the body is practical. If you skip that part, every template sounds fake the moment your pulse starts negotiating for you. The first twist is that a boundary is not only a sentence, it is also a body moment. Before you write anything, your system may already be scanning for consequences. Will they leave? Will they think I am difficult? Will this cost future referrals? Will I spend tonight rewriting a contract in my head while pretending to watch a show? The boundary begins before language, in the little internal meeting where fear has somehow appointed itself project manager. The useful question is not whether the feeling is dramatic enough. The useful question is whether it keeps making the business smaller, blurrier, or more afraid. That is why generic advice can feel insulting. Just tell them your limits. Wonderful. Also, simply levitate. For solo creators, limits sit inside relationships that carry money, identity, and reputation. A client is not just a task source. Sometimes they are rent, portfolio proof, social validation, and the person who might introduce you to the next project. When all of that sits behind one notification, the body can treat the message like a threat instead of admin. Fresh workplace data gives this feeling context. Monster's 2026 State of Workplace Mental Health Report, covered by Allwork.Space on May 11, found that 59% of employed U.S. workers say their job negatively impacts their mental health at least monthly. That is employees with organizations, job descriptions, and in theory, structures around them. Freelancers often get the stress without the structure. There is no HR department in the spare bedroom. There is just you, a mug, and a client asking whether the extra version is included. That missing structure matters because structure usually slows down consequences. Without it, every request can feel immediate, personal, and strangely final. The same report found 70% of employees feel pressure to appear okay at work even when they are struggling. Freelancers know this pressure in a very specific font. No worries, all good, totally fine, happy to help. Those phrases can be sincere. They can also be tiny emotional masks. You may be trying to reassure the client before you have even checked whether the request is possible, paid, in scope, or compatible with the fact that you are a human being with a spine and laundry. Then comes the safety problem. Monster also reported that 37% feel they cannot be honest about mental health without negative consequences. Translate that into freelance language. I cannot be honest that this timeline is not okay. I cannot be honest that the brief changed. I cannot be honest that I am overloaded. I cannot be honest that a Sunday call is not collaboration. It is my weekend being quietly repossessed. So the creator smiles through the inbox and calls it professionalism. This is where the nervous system part matters. When your body expects punishment for honesty, it may push you toward appeasement. Appeasement sounds polite. It says sure. It says no problem. It says I can squeeze that in. It is trying to keep connection, money, and safety intact. The problem is that appeasement is terrible at contracts. It may protect the feeling of the moment while handing the project 3 extra deliverables and a folding chair in your personal life. Appeasement is understandable, not embarrassing. It learned to keep doors open. We simply do not want it approving budgets, timelines, and access without supervision. A client boundary spiral usually has 3 layers. Layer 1 is the actual request. Can you make this faster? Can you add another version? Can you jump on a call? Layer 2 is the imagined consequence. If I say no, they will leave, tell everyone, and my career will be found face down in a spreadsheet. Layer 3 is identity. If I disappoint them, maybe I am selfish, ungrateful, or not cut out for this. The email was small. The meaning machine was not. Notice how quickly the meaning machine upgrades a logistical issue into a character trial. A timeline question becomes am I reliable? A revision limit becomes am I kind? A rate boundary becomes am I greedy? This is why creators over-explain. You are not only answering the client. You are trying to persuade the anxious part of you that you are still a good person. Unfortunately, clients rarely need the full museum tour of your internal guilt exhibit. Mental Health Awareness Week 2026 runs from May 11 to 17 with the theme action. For yourself, for someone else, for all of us. That word action is useful because awareness alone can become a very well-lit waiting room. Knowing you people, please, is not the same as having a replacement behavior. The action here is not dramatic. It is learning to pause before the old apology script grabs the keyboard and starts donating your evening. Action can be one tiny interruption in the loop. Breathe, wait, check scope, then answer. Tiny is not weak when tiny is repeatable. So here is the first move. Pause for 90 seconds before replying to any message that makes your chest tighten. Not 90 minutes, not 3 days of avoidance marketed as strategy. 90 seconds, put both feet down. Unclench the jaw you have been using as a project management tool. Read the request once for facts, then once for feelings. The goal is not to become perfectly calm. The goal is to stop letting adrenaline be the account manager. You are building a response habit, not trying to win an emotional debate with every notification. Second move, name the real fear privately, not in the email. Please do not send the client a paragraph that begins, "My abandonment schema has entered the workspace." Just write it for yourself. "I'm afraid they will leave. I'm afraid they will think I am difficult. I'm afraid I need the money. I'm afraid I already agreed to too much." Naming the fear separates the client request from the emotional weather system around it. Third move, answer with scope instead of apology. Scope is beautifully boring. This request is outside the current deliverables. This timeline would require a rush fee. I can do option A by Friday or option B by next Wednesday. That is language a business can stand on. Apology language says, "Sorry, I know this is annoying. I can probably figure it out. Please continue having power over my blood pressure." Scope language lets the client make a decision. Scope is also kinder to the client because it turns vague desire into visible trade-offs. Clear options give both people something steadier than hints. The mid-script reversal is this. The boundary is not the conflict. The unclear agreement is the conflict wearing nicer clothes. If a client assumes unlimited access and you assume reasonable limits, the fight is already in the room. A boundary simply turns on the lights. That can feel scary if you learn that keeping people comfortable is the rent you pay for being accepted. But business clarity is not cruelty. It is how adults stop making guesses with invoices attached. Let's take the classic late-night message. The client sends a note at 10:47 p.m. asking whether you can make a quick change before morning. Your body wants to protect the relationship by replying immediately. But the project does not need your panic. It needs a system. A calm response tomorrow can say, "I can review this during production hours. If it needs same-day turnaround, I can add a rush option." That sentence is not icy. It is oxygen with punctuation. Now take scope creep. The client says, "While you are in there, could you also make a second version for the other platform?" The anxious brain hears, "If I say no, I lose the client." The regulated business brain says, "Happy to add that." It is outside the current scope, so I can quote it as an add-on or swap it for one of the existing deliverables. See the magic? You did not punish the client. You stopped punishing yourself. Now take emotional access. Some clients do not only want work, they want soothing. They send scattered messages, ask for constant reassurance, or use urgency as a love language nobody agreed to. Your boundary can be warm and firm. "I want to keep communication clear, so please send feedback in one consolidated note by Thursday. I will respond in the project thread." You are not refusing care. You are keeping the project from turning your nervous system into customer support software. A useful boundary has 4 parts: acknowledgement, scope, option, next step. Acknowledgement says you heard them. Scope says what is true. Option says what can happen. Next step says where the project goes now. For example, "I see why you want another version." That is outside the original scope. "I can add it for this fee, or we can replace the second deliverable. Let me know which route you prefer." Calm, clear, tragically adult. If that formula feels stiff, practice it out loud until it sounds like you. A boundary that fits your voice is easier to send twice. What about guilt? Guilt will arrive wearing a little headset and saying, "But they are nice." Good. Nice clients still need scope. In fact, nice clients deserve clarity because it prevents resentment from quietly growing under the project. If you keep giving extras to preserve warmth, the relationship becomes less warm over time. The client thinks everything is fine. You are in the background developing a private weather event every time their name appears in the inbox. What about fear of losing money? That one deserves respect. Freelancers cannot pay rent with boundary affirmations, which is deeply rude of the economy. Sometimes you may choose to bend because the income matters. The reset is not about never compromising. It is about knowing when you are choosing a compromise versus being dragged there by panic. Choice feels different in the body. It may still be uncomfortable, but it does not leave the same bitter aftertaste. That distinction protects your self-respect. Bending from choice can be strategic. Bending from fear usually sends your future self the invoice. This is why a boundary log helps. For 1 week, write down every time you want to say yes too fast. What did the client ask? What did you fear would happen? What did you actually respond? What would a scope-based response have sounded like? You are not collecting evidence that you are broken. You are mapping the alarm system. Patterns become less mystical when you can see them sitting in a notebook next to 3 coffee rings. The log will usually reveal a favorite fear. Some creators fear being seen as difficult. Some fear losing the client. Some fear disappointing a person who has praised them before. Some fear that if they ask for money, the client will discover they were never worth it. That fear matters because it tells you which boundary script needs the most practice. Boundaries are emotional reps. Unfortunately, the gym is your inbox. Practice with low-stakes messages first. Do not begin with the client who makes your stomach file a complaint. Start with a small add-on, a timeline clarification, or a meeting request. Send one sentence that is slightly clearer than your usual sentence. That counts. The nervous system learns through repetition, not one heroic email written at 1:12 a.m. while sitting like a shrimp over the laptop. Small, clear messages are how the body learns honesty does not always end in disaster. Low-stakes practice matters because your system needs proof, not slogans. Each calm response becomes one more receipt that clarity can survive. If a client reacts badly to a reasonable boundary, that is information. It does not automatically mean you did the boundary wrong. Some people enjoyed the old blurry system because blurry systems give them free access. A bad reaction can reveal a mismatch you were paying for with stress. A good client might ask a question, choose an option, or adjust expectations. A difficult client may treat clarity like betrayal. That difference is not a small detail. It is a business forecast. Here is the exact script for a revision request. Thanks for sending this over. The requested change is outside the included revision round because it adds a new deliverable. I can add it for this amount, or we can keep the current scope and adjust the existing piece. Which option works best? Notice what is missing: 3 apologies, a childhood history, and the phrase, "I hate to be annoying." You are not annoying. You are pricing reality. Here is the exact script for a timeline squeeze. I can meet the original deadline with the current scope. If this needs to be added before then, I can offer a rush turnaround for this fee, or we can move delivery to this date. That script gives the client control without handing them your sleep. It also turns urgency into a choice. Urgency loves pretending it is a weather event. Often, it is a budget decision wearing a watch. Here is the exact script for unclear feedback. To keep revisions efficient, please send consolidated notes in one message by this time. I will review and confirm what fits the included round. That is not cold. It is kind to the project. Scattered feedback makes everyone anxious and makes the creator do unpaid emotional archaeology. Consolidated feedback gives the work a floor, and your nervous system deserves flooring that is not made of loose emails. The counseling-informed piece is that you should regulate before you negotiate. If you negotiate while activated, you will often try to buy safety by giving things away. Time, money, access, energy, weekends, dignity, the decent version of your Friday. Regulation does not mean you feel nothing. It means you can tell the difference between a client choosing another option and your entire worth leaving the building with a suitcase. This also protects the client relationship. Boundaries are not walls with spikes. They are road markings. They show where the work can move safely. Without them, everyone swerves and then acts surprised when resentment happens. A calm scope boundary tells the client how to get what they want without accidentally draining the person making it. That is not anti-service. That is how service remains sustainable past the first invoice. That is the hidden generosity of a limit. It keeps the work clean enough that respect can stay in the room after the invoice is paid. Let's recap the reset. 1. Notice the body alarm. 2. Pause before replying. 3. Name the real fear privately. 4. Answer with acknowledgement, scope, option, and next step. 5. Log the pattern so you can see which fear keeps grabbing the keyboard. You are not bad at boundaries because you lack intelligence. You are learning to speak clearly while your nervous system is trying to prevent imaginary disaster with customer service voice. This week, pick one boundary sentence and practice it in a low-stakes place. Not a dramatic life overhaul. One sentence. One scope clarification. One response that does not apologize for the existence of time. That is action for yourself, and weirdly, it is also action for the relationship. Clear limits make collaboration cleaner. They let kindness stop pretending it has to be unlimited to count. The practice works because it gives your body a new ending. A clear sentence goes out, and the world does not automatically punish you. Part 2 moves from the client message to the work itself, because sometimes burnout does not arrive as collapse. Sometimes it arrives as the strange sadness of doing work you once wanted, for clients you technically like, while feeling like the work no longer belongs to you. That is not laziness. That is the next boundary problem hiding inside meaning, autonomy, and recognition. So when the next client message changes your breathing, do not let the first draft come from panic. Let panic have a chair, not the keyboard. Pause, name the fear, answer with scope. You are allowed to be warm and still have limits. You are allowed to be kind and still charge for extra work. You are allowed to be a creator whose inbox no longer gets to run the entire nervous system. And because this is Shad Counseling, your homework is not to become a serene boundary statue by Tuesday. It is to notice one lockjaw yes before it leaves your fingers. That is the beginning of the reset. Not perfection, not toughness, just enough space between the trigger and the reply for your actual business to enter the room. After enough repetitions, the inbox becomes less like a courtroom and more like a place where information arrives and decisions get made.